These days when I hear the phrase third-person shooter, the first thing that comes to mind is a seemingly endless glut of sci-fi inspired titles with little to distinguish themselves apart. Back in the late 90s, it seemed that developers were often able and willing to take more risks with the style of third-person shooters, and so this led to some weird and wonderful games which I have fond memories of. One of these very games is Men Sarges Heroes. Developed and published by the 3DO company in late 1999, it seems everyone's childhood mainstay plastic soldiers brought to life like you've never seen them before. General Plastro and the evil bad guy Tan army have discovered portals which allows them to travel between their world and ours. The Green army has been decimated by the new weapons which the Tan army have access to, and the only free member of the Bravo team is you, as Sarge. IGN described this game as Micro Machines meets GoldenEye, and I couldn't agree more. Each of the levels starts off with a mission briefing, and you are given a set of objectives which you must accomplish to drive the story forward and progress to the game's later levels. What surprised me the most about the game, however, though, was that this storyline's satirical look at modern war. The game's protagonist, General Plastro, openly uses racist lines of dialogue about the colour of the green soldiers. If the game had been set in a real world setting, then there's no way that this would ever achieve the rating to go on sale. The first time you see and hear this, it's surprisingly shocking, but then you take into account the whole concept behind the war in the game, and it further underlines just how pointless and ridiculous war actually is. Not only is the game's storyline surprisingly interesting and deep though, the gameplay is far better than I ever expected. You have a huge range of weapons to play with, and finding which weapon is most suited to each situation is all part of the fun. Picking off enemies with a sniper rifle as you advance on an enemy fortress is fantastic, and taking down tanks with the bazooka is a blast, especially as you have seconds to attack before they spot you and try to blast you into bits. If you've played the game before, then you'll no doubt love the Flamethrower, which is a hilarious way to melt your enemies, and it is one of the highlights of the game. Thankfully, you can check out all of the weapons as well as the wide range of moves your character has in the game's training mode. In fitting with the rest of the game, this takes place in the army base, and you'll have free reign to shoot targets and crawl around on the ground taking pot shots. You will need to learn your trade here, because the game is very action packed and sides more on the aggression side rather than a defensive stance. Having the weapons auto aim for the most part is welcome, although there are odd instances where it doesn't quite lock correctly, and by the time you've got your shot on, you'll have taken a lot of hits. Thankfully though, health and other items such as ammo are scattered all over the place, and so you'll rarely have to conserve ammo at any point in the game. The level design is also quite solid, and personal highlights include sneaking into enemy bases by hitting switches, disabling security fences, and sneaking around trying to find your comrades to rescue. You'll either love or hate the graphics. A lot of this comes down to whether or not you play the game with the expansion pack. With the pack in and the high-res mode turned on, the game looks superb. Everything is richer, more detailed, but the frame rate is heavily reduced at times, and it then leads the game to stumble along at such a slow pace, it really does detract from the gameplay. Without the high-res mode enabled, the game clearly takes a hit on the visuals as the draw distance and texture quality are reduced, but this does help the frame rate, as everything in the low-res mode runs smoothly and it makes controlling the game a whole lot easier. The art style is nicely done whatever mode you play in. While in the Army Men world, it can be a little bit bland at times with its serious environment, but it's when you enter portals into the human world where the huge scale of the environment comes into play. Having to make your way around a kitchen and having something as mundane as a sink as a treacherous obstacle lightens up the overall mood of the game, and it can't help but make you smile. There are also some very nicely done cutscenes, some of which try to add a serious tone to the game. These, however, more often than not come across comical, and it's hard to tell what the developers were actually intending. The music also gets a strong thumbs up. It takes its cues from classic war movies, and if you're a fan of classic 80s action films, then you'll love how the game sounds. The effects are also top notch, and the bass-heavy explosions really make this feel like a war game rather than a childish shooter. One thing that really surprised me though was that the game's multiplayer mode was so well received. Whilst it's certainly a fun feature, there are much better multiplayer games on the system. However, this is a welcome addition to the game, and when you've completed the single player campaign, this adds longevity to what would otherwise have been quite a short experience. Men Sarges Heroes was a breath of fresh air, not just for its time, but even by today's standards. It's a game which doesn't take itself seriously, and in doing that, it allows you to enjoy its humour, slapstick comedy, and hilarious look at what is actually quite a serious storyline undertone. Its terrible camera system and sometimes fiddly controls are something which you can learn to look past, as the gameplay is intense and as enjoyable as many as the other shooters on the system. Is this the best third-person shooter on the console? Certainly not. But trust me, you'll have a blast playing this if you can allow yourself just to be entertained by it. When I posted a review of Army Men Air Combat, I was blown away at just how many of you remember that title. With this game being more popular, I'd love to hear your memories of this game in the comments section down below. Whether you loved or hated this title, sound off about it in the comments section down below, and let's go ahead and discuss this retro classic. And until next time.